Why did her energy change before her words ever did? There's always a moment. Quiet, subtle, easy to ignore but impossible to deny once you feel it. A delay in her reply, a colder tone, a missing spark that used to be there without effort. And if you're honest, you felt it before anything was said. That shift, the moment she stopped looking at you like you were her first choice, that's where everything began to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, slowly. Because attraction doesn't disappear in one mistake. It fades when something deeper changes. Not in what you say, but in how she feels around you. And that's the part most men never understand. They think if a woman pulls away, it's because they didn't do enough. So they try harder. More messages, more attention, more effort. But the truth is, that's exactly what makes it worse. Because attraction was never built on effort. It was built on emotion, on tension, on curiosity, on the feeling that something is there but not fully in your control. Think about the beginning. She was different, more present, more engaged, more alive around you. She replied fast. She laughed easily. She leaned in without hesitation. There was energy between you. Not forced, natural, and more importantly, unpredictable. You didn't fully know her. She didn't fully know you. There was space. And inside that space, there was attraction. But over time, something shifted. You became easier to read, easier to predict, always available, always replying, always there. At first, it feels right, like you're doing everything correctly, being consistent, being attentive. But what you don't see is this. When everything becomes certain, the feeling starts to disappear. She stops wondering, stops thinking about you, stops feeling that small tension that made her excited to see you. And without that, her emotions flatten. Not instantly, gradually. Her replies get shorter, her energy drops, her excitement fades. Not because she decided it, but because she felt it. And feelings don't follow logic, they follow experience. And the experience changed. That's when you notice it. That distance, that quiet disconnection. And most men react the same way. They panic. They try to fix it. They give more. But here's the hard truth. When attraction starts fading, more effort doesn't bring it back. It exposes something else. Need. And the moment she feels that you need her more than she needs you, everything shifts. She leans back. You lean forward. She becomes the one in control. And once that balance breaks, respect begins to fade. Not loudly, silently. Because she no longer feels the same tension, no longer feels that edge, no longer feels like she could lose you. And when that feeling disappears, so does the attraction. She doesn't always realize it. She won't explain it clearly, but her behavior shows it. Less effort, less interest, less presence. And the worst part, by the time you fully understand what's happening, she's already emotionally gone. Still there physically, maybe, but mentally, she checked out. And no words can bring that back. Because attraction isn't logical. You can't explain it back into existence. You can't convince someone to feel something again. It either exists or it fades. And it fades when the emotional experience becomes flat, when there's no tension, no curiosity, no space for her to feel anything. That's the part most men ignore. They think being always there is the answer, but being always there removes the very thing that made her feel something in the first place. Space, mystery, uncertainty, that subtle question in her mind, where do I stand with him? When that question disappears, so does the excitement, because now she knows. She knows you're there. She knows you won't leave. She knows she doesn't have to earn your attention. And when something is always available, it stops feeling valuable. That's when the shift happens. Not because you weren't enough, but because the dynamic changed. From tension to comfort, from curiosity to certainty, from desire to familiarity. And familiarity without emotional depth turns into indifference. That's why she pulled away. Not because of one thing you said, but because of how things started to feel. Flat, predictable, safe in a way that no longer excites her. And once that feeling settles in, she doesn't fight it. She follows it, quietly, slowly, until one day you're no longer the man she craved, just someone she got used to. And that change started long before you ever noticed it.
There's something even more uncomfortable than losing her interest. It's the moment you realize you helped create the distance. Not intentionally, not knowingly, but through small shifts repeated over time. Because attraction doesn't just fade from what you do wrong, it fades from what you slowly become. And one of the biggest changes is something most men think is right: chasing. Not in an obvious way, not always desperate or loud. Sometimes it looks calm, polite, caring. But underneath it, there's a quiet urgency, a need to keep her close, a need to not lose her. And she feels that, immediately. Not through your words, through your energy. The way you respond faster than usual. The way you adjust your mood based on hers. The way you start prioritizing her above everything else. It doesn't look weak on the surface, but it feels different. And that feeling changes everything. Because the moment a woman senses that you're trying to keep her, she stops trying to keep you. It's subtle, almost invisible, but powerful. She leans back just a little, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she no longer feels that tension pulling her in. Now she knows. She knows you're there. She knows you'll respond. She knows she doesn't have to wonder anymore. And once that certainty settles in, something inside her relaxes, but not in a good way, in a way that removes excitement. Because attraction lives in the space between knowing and not knowing, between having and possibly losing. Remove that space, and there's nothing left to feel. This is where most men make the mistake. They think when she pulls away, they should move closer. They think distance should be met with effort. So they reach out more. They ask more questions. They try to understand. They try to fix. But what they don't see is this. Every time you move closer while she's pulling away, you confirm her position. You confirm that she has the power, that she can step back and you will step forward. And once that pattern forms, it repeats. She becomes the center, you become the one reacting. And attraction cannot survive in that dynamic. Because attraction requires balance. Not equality in actions, but equality in emotional position. She needs to feel like she's moving toward you, not just watching you move toward her. That's what creates desire. That sense that she is choosing you, not just receiving you. But when you chase, that disappears. Now she's not choosing, she's accepting. And there's no excitement in being given something you didn't have to earn. You see it in small things. She takes longer to reply. You reply faster. She cancels plans. You try to reschedule immediately. She becomes distant. You become more expressive. And with every step, the gap grows. Not because she's doing more, but because you're doing too much. And the more you do, the less she feels. Because now there's no challenge, no tension, no emotional pull, just presence, constant, predictable presence. And that's when something deeper happens. She stops respecting the dynamic. Not you as a person, but the way the interaction feels. Because respect in attraction isn't about kindness, it's about strength, emotional strength, the ability to remain centered even when things are uncertain. But when you react to every shift, when your mood changes based on her behavior, when your actions become a response to her distance, you lose that center. And she feels it. Again, not logically, emotionally. She feels that your state depends on her, and the moment she feels that, the balance breaks completely. Because now she's not just part of your life, she feels like your focus, and that kind of attention feels heavy. not attractive. That's why she pulls back even more. Not to punish you, but to create space. Space she no longer feels on her own. And the more space she tries to create, the more you try to close it. And that cycle kills attraction faster than anything else. Because now it's no longer natural, it's reactive. She moves, you follow. She pauses, you push. She withdraws, you reach. And in that pattern, you slowly lose the one thing that made her feel something in the beginning: your independence, your grounded presence, your ability to exist without needing her response. Because in the beginning, you didn't chase. You were present, but not dependent. Interested, but not invested in an outcome. There was space in you, a sense that you had your own world, your own direction. And she felt that. She felt that you weren't trying to get something from her. You were simply experiencing her. And that's what pulled her in. But over time, that shifted. Your focus narrowed. Your attention centered around her. And without realizing it, you started seeking something: validation, consistency, reassurance. And the moment she felt that shift, her energy changed. Because attraction cannot grow in a space where one person is seeking and the other is being observed. It only grows when both feel the possibility of losing something. Not in a toxic way, but in a real, subtle sense. That neither one fully owns the other. That both are choosing, continuously. But when you chase, you remove that possibility. You make the choice one-sided. And once that happens, she stops feeling the need to choose. She already knows. And knowing kills curiosity, kills tension, kills desire. That's why silence feels so powerful. Not because it's a tactic, but because it restores space. It breaks the pattern. It removes the constant presence that made everything feel predictable. When you stop reacting, when you stop filling every gap, something shifts. Not immediately, not obviously, but subtly. She notices the absence, the difference, the space. And for the first time in a while, she starts to feel something again. Not certainty, but curiosity. Why didn't he respond? Why is he so calm? Why does it feel different now? And those questions are where attraction begins to rebuild. Because attraction doesn't come from answers. It comes from questions, from the unknown, from the feeling that there's something more just out of reach. But that only exists when you stop trying to control the outcome, when you stop chasing, when you return to that grounded state where your presence is real but not constant, where your attention is given but not guaranteed, where your energy is stable regardless of what she does. Because in that space, you're no longer reacting, you're simply being. And that's the version of you she felt something for in the first place. Not the one trying to hold her, not the one trying to fix things, but the one who didn't need to. The one who was steady, calm, unmoved by small shifts, present without pressure. That's where attraction lives. Not in effort, not in chasing, but in the quiet strength of someone who doesn't need to force anything to be felt. There is a point where everything becomes clear. Not because she explains it, not because there is closure, but because you finally see the pattern without emotion distorting it. You realize that nothing you said would have changed it. Nothing you gave would have fixed it. Because it was never about doing more. It was about who you became in the process. And this is where most men either repeat the cycle or break out of it completely. Because there is one final shift that changes everything. Not in her, in you. It's the moment you stop trying to be chosen and start becoming someone who chooses, quietly, calmly, without needing to prove it. Because the truth is, as long as you're waiting for her reaction, you're not in control of yourself. Your mood depends on her response. Your energy follows her attention. Your thoughts revolve around what she might do next.
And that state is the exact opposite of attraction. Not because it's wrong, but because it feels unstable. It feels like you're standing on something that can move at any moment. And she feels that instability, even if you hide it well, even if you say the right things. Energy always reveals what words try to cover. That's why the strongest shift is internal. It's when your focus returns to yourself. Not in a loud, forced way, not in a way where you pretend not to care, but in a real, grounded way, where your life has direction again, where your attention is no longer waiting, but moving. You wake up with purpose. You move through your day with intention. Your mind is occupied with growth, not with replaying conversations. And slowly, without forcing anything, your energy changes. You become quieter, but stronger, more present, but less reactive. You stop checking your phone constantly. You stop analyzing every small detail. You stop needing something to happen. And in that space, you return to yourself. Not the version that was trying to keep her, but the version that didn't need to. The version that had his own rhythm, his own path, his own center. And something interesting happens when you reach that state. You stop seeing her as the only option. Not because you replace her, but because you stop placing her above everything else. You see her clearly, without exaggeration, without emotional bias, just as she is. And that clarity changes the dynamic completely. Because now, you're not trying to win her back. You're deciding if she still fits into your life. That shift is quiet, but powerful. Because for the first time, the pressure is gone. You're not chasing an outcome, you're observing reality. And when you operate from that place, your behavior naturally changes. You don't respond instantly, not on purpose, but because you're engaged in your own life. You don't over-explain because you don't feel the need to justify yourself. You don't seek reassurance because your state is no longer dependent on her validation. And without trying, you become less predictable. Not in a strategic way, but in an authentic way. Because your actions are no longer reactions. They come from your own direction, your own pace. And that creates something subtle but undeniable. Presence. The kind of presence that doesn't ask for attention, but holds it. The kind that doesn't try to impress, but naturally draws focus. Because it's grounded, steady, unaffected by small changes. And that's what shifts everything. Because now, if she reaches out, you don't jump, you don't rush. You respond calmly, with space, with control. Not to play a game, but because that's who you are now. And she feels it. That difference, that calmness, that lack of urgency. And for the first time in a long time, she doesn't fully understand you. There's something she can't read anymore, something that isn't easily predictable. And that feeling creates curiosity, not forced, natural, because human nature is drawn to what it cannot fully grasp. But here's the part most men don't expect. By the time you reach this state, her reaction stops mattering the way it used to. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become whole. Your life is no longer waiting for something to return. It's already moving, already growing, already full. And that changes the meaning of everything. If she comes back, it's a choice, not a need. If she doesn't, nothing collapses, nothing breaks, because your center is no longer external, it's internal. And that's the real power. Not getting her back, not making her chase, but reaching a point where your state doesn't depend on either, where you can stand still while everything around you moves, where you don't force outcomes, you allow them, where your value isn't proven through effort, it's felt through presence. And that's something no one can fake for long, because it comes from alignment, from knowing who you are and not moving away from it, no matter who stays, no matter who leaves. And when you reach that place, something becomes very clear. The loss you thought mattered so much was never the real issue. It was the shift that forced you to see yourself differently, to rebuild, to return, to become someone who doesn't need to hold on to anything to feel complete. And in that realization, there is a kind of quiet freedom. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, the kind that doesn't depend on anyone else understanding it, the kind that stays even when everything else changes. And once you feel that, you stop asking why she lost interest, because the answer is no longer what matters.